Pandemic Studios spent most of the PS2 era trying to be one of the biggest video game developers, but they could never quite make it. Despite making games such as Star Wars Battlefront, Destroy All Humans and Mercenaries, they never quite reached the same heights as other studios such as Rockstar or Insomniac. Their games just didn't have the same polish that other AAA titles had, which became very noticeable when they started making games on the 360, most notably The Lord of the Rings Conquest. This eventually led to EA shutting them down back in 2009. I liked Pandemic when they were around, especially the Star Wars Battlefront games, so I decided to check out the last game they ever made called the Saboteur. The Saboteur didn't sell too well and was ignored due to the oversaturation of open world games at the time. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad game though, so did Pandemic end their career with their best game yet, or is the Saboteur best left forgotten? Let's have a look. The game takes place in Paris during the Nazi occupation of France. You play as an Irishman called Sean DeFell who is seeking revenge on a Nazi called Dear Kurt. Your character is based off a real life person called William Grover Williams, although the game's story is fictional, as the only things about these two people that are the same is that they're both racing drivers and they both help the resistance in Paris. The story is okay. It gets the job done of getting you to the end of the game. Even though Sean is mostly an Irish stereotype, he's still not a likeable guy. A personal problem I have with the story is that it doesn't really focus on any of the history of the time. I'm sure a lot of interesting events took place in occupied Paris, but the game only uses the World War II setting as a backdrop for its own story, which is barely based off real life events. This doesn't make the story bad, but there's a lot more they could have done with the setting and the history rather than just a revenge story. The gameplay comes out of performing tasks in a decent sized open world. You have the main missions which involve either having to blow something up, rescuing someone, or making you drive to a location. If you've ever played any other third person open world shooter, then you should know what the variety of missions are here. I know the phrase is redundant at this point in time, but the missions make this game feel like a GTA clone. Every mission feels like it could have been taken from a GTA game, and there isn't much added to this game to make them original. You would think that the World War II setting would make it feel unique, but I found that it doesn't really add much when going through the missions. For the most part they follow the standard open world formula. You talk to someone, you drive to the marker on the map, you kill a load of people, and then you drive back to HQ for your next mission. I wouldn't say the missions are dull to play though, but they definitely did feel lacking and unoriginal. While it does feel like a GTA clone, unlike GTA you can use stealth during missions. If you manage to kill a Nazi without shooting them, you can take their uniform and use it as a disguise. You can then complete your objectives without firing any bullets as long as you're not spotted. This was a cool idea, as for the majority of missions you can decide if you either want to storm the place or take the more subtle approach. However, the execution of the stealth mechanics makes trying to stay disguised too much of a headache. You have a meter that goes up if you act suspicious. Once it fills up, the full alarm sounds. The meter fills up too easily though, as if you don't slowly walk around, the meter fills up, and if you get too close to a Nazi, then it also fills up. Stealth in games relies on two things to make it work: the tension of not being caught and the satisfaction in outsmarting enemies, but in the Saboteur neither of the elements are here due to how easy it is to be caught. The AI feels like it was designed for the action element of the game rather than the stealth, as they just walk right up to you and you can't run away as they will get suspicious, and you can't be near them as they also get suspicious, so the alarm will end up going off and you have to shoot everyone. The stealth feels way too loose for it to work, and when a game like this just lets you kill the guards anyway, it makes putting time and effort into not getting spotted feel pointless. The open world features a large amount of things to do. There are optional missions you can do as you play through the story. There are also marks on the map where there are Nazi properties that can be destroyed for cash. They do add replay value to the game, as it will take you a good while to get all of them, but whether you will all depends. If you think this is a great game that you want to get the most out of it, then you'll probably enjoy getting all of the extra stuff on the map, but I didn't really have any interest in going for the 100%. It doesn't help either that you need dynamite to blow up most of these markers, but you can only carry 8 at a time, so you'll have to keep going back to the shop to buy more dynamite. It also doesn't help that for a lot of them you have to climb buildings, which, despite it supposed to being a main feature, doesn't work well. It can be unclear where you can and can't climb, and it isn't fun to scale buildings, as you have to press A every time you want to jump to a new ledge, rather than just holding the button in a game like Assassin's Creed. Most open world games feature some sort of police system, and the Saboteur is no different. If you're seen in an area you're not supposed to be, or you attack a Nazi and get spotted, then an alarm is raised. To turn it off, you can either drive out of the red circle that appears on your map without being seen, or find a hiding spot. For the first half of the game, this system works great, as it's pretty easy to reset the alarm and doesn't get in the way of what you're trying to do. In the second half though, it becomes frustrating. Almost all the missions end with the objective escape the Nazis, but because of what you did in the mission, you would have reached a high level of alarm. You can't just drive out of the circle anymore, as Nazis spawn in everywhere, moving the circle, and you can't use the hiding spots as you have to enter them without being seen, and there are way too many Nazis around and not enough hiding spots. It becomes such a pain, which doesn't really break the game, but it does bring the overall experience down trying to escape the Nazis. I'm afraid to say the Saboteur, like Pandemic's other games, does have a lack of polish. From things such as the controls, which can be all over the place, and things such as the enemy's AI. The lack of polish isn't a major problem, but it does get in the way of taking this game seriously. It takes place during World War II, but it does feel a bit cartoonish in certain aspects, so it doesn't quite have the appropriate gritty tone. The game does also do something else different to try and set the tone, which is the black and white. In any area still controlled by the Nazis, everything is in black and white. When you liberate the area by completing missions, the colours of the area are restored. It's a great idea, but it's not as striking as you would think. You stop noticing very early on, and in the end adds very little to the experience. The game also took me just under 10 hours to beat, although that was without doing the side missions and free play targets, so there's definitely a lot to this game to keep you occupied if you can get yourself invested into it. The Saboteur is a game built on a lot of good ideas but fails to pull most of them off. The setting is great, but the story isn't amazing. The missions allow for stealth and action, but the stealth is tiresome and feels pointless. It really is strange how much of a GTA clone this game feels, as it does do a lot of things differently from that game, just not well enough. I wouldn't say I had a bad time playing the game apart from some small frustrations towards the end, and if you have some interest in the game then I still say check it out. You can enjoy it as long as you're willing to put up with some mediocrity. My score is 6.0 out of 10. It's a decent game that doesn't stand out as much as it should due to the sloppy execution of everything that should make it unique.